Why doesn't he give up his job and let a woman take over? Why did he give James Purnell his job without even advertising it? A woman may well have wanted that very highly paid job at the BBC. They didn't even get a chance to apply for the job because James Purnell just got it on the Old Boys Network. Lord Hall rang up his mate and asked him if he wanted a highly paid job without any competition. So I think before the BBC executives start saying what they're going to be doing to other people, they ought to actually practice what they preach. Why don't they give up their own jobs and let some women get a chance to these highly paid jobs running the BBC?
Philip Davis, thank you. James Purnell, the BBC's Director of Radio and Education, is live on PM. Was your job available to a woman?
My current job I was interviewed for, and exactly the same process that Charlotte Moore, Mark Lindsay got their job. It was more akin to a government reshuffle than applying for a completely new job.
I don't understand what that means. I mean, was your job available to a woman to apply for?
Tony recently changed the way that his top team is done, and we all went through the same process, which is we were interviewed for those roles. But he was
sort of invited in. So Philip Davis is right. It was a kind of old boys thing, was it?
It was an old boys thing. You know, it wasn't all boys. So Charlotte Moore, for example, is obviously not a boy. He decided to change his team, and it's very, very common for people to do that in companies and to move people around. We did something that most other companies wouldn't do, which was there was an interview process with our non-execs, and they decided they wanted to change the way the team was structured.
And you're not at all embarrassed about how you got the job?
No, not at all.
Why do on-air people get paid more if they have a penis?
Look, it's not to do with that. It's to do with the historic pattern of the way that broadcasting has worked. We are absolutely agreeing that we've got further to go. We've said that we want to eliminate the gender pay gap by 2020.
How will you do it?
Let me just make the point that the BBC already does better than the national average. We know that the national average is 18% gender pay gap. We're already at 10%. We want to get to 0. We've also said we want to get to equality in terms of male and female presenters. How will we do that? We'll do it by having a brilliant talent pipeline of women, also people from ethnic minority.
What's a brilliant talent pipeline? What about answering Jane Garvey's question? Are you going to cut the pay of well-paid men, or are you going to raise the pay of poorly paid women?
To answer your first question, that means having a great set of people who can come and take over, exactly like Tess Daly and Claudia Winkleman have done, exactly like we've done with Kamal Ahmed, with Amol Rajan, with Laura Kunsberg. You know, that is the way that we are changing the face of the BBC. In terms of the number of people on this list, 60% of the people who've come on in the last 3 years are women, 20% are from ethnic minority backgrounds. That is above the averages, obviously, and that's transforming the way that the BBC looks.
So are you going to cut the pay of men, or are you going to raise the pay of women?
We renegotiate these contracts every 1, 2 or 3 years. We have been cutting pay, actually, and that is something that's happened quite commonly. I can't go into the individual details. It's also true that we've cut the overall talent bill by 25%. So we have been acting on this. We've been doing it at a time when talent pay is growing up everywhere. You know, your listeners will know about footballers, about Hollywood, about entertainment stars. We are losing people to Amazon, to Apple, to Netflix every week. And it's not just the top stars. It goes all the way through to documentary commissioners, to people who do live music. So the reality of this is we are operating in a market. We have to get the best talent on the BBC because people want the best programmes. We just don't do it at any price. We try and get a discount from the market.
But why are you using public money to discriminate against women?
We're not discriminating against women. You know, if you
why are they paid so poorly compared to men?
If you compare the BBC to the rest of the industry,
I'm not interested in the rest of the industry.
You're the best.
Funded by the licence
We are the best. I agree with that. We need to do better. We need to be the best in the industry, and we are.
So who are all the executives who presided over this over
40% of our senior managers are women. That is better than anywhere else in the industry. We've committed to get to equality by 2020. No one else in the industry is doing that. We are going to lead the transformation, not just of the BBC, but of the whole industry.
Who are the BBC managers who presided over this unfairness over all these years? And why, after all these years, is there still this huge gap?
We've been putting that gap right. So as I say, 60% of people on this list are women. 3 years ago, 37% of our senior managers were women. That's now up to 40%. The proportion of gay and ethnic minority people in our workforce is in line with the national average. You know, we are the best in the industry. We're better than the civil service, than the FTSE 100. But we agree we want to go further and faster. And we therefore set a commitment that I don't know anyone else has done of getting to equality by 2020.
Gary Lineker gets up to 1.8 million compared to Claire Balding up to 200,000.
They do very different jobs. I mean, that's the difficulty of comparing these salaries exactly without the context. You know, Gary Lineker, we know because he has recently taken on a job at BT, his value in the market is significantly higher than the one that he gets at the BBC, and he's confirmed that today on Twitter. So that is the reality. We have to get the best talent into the BBC. We have to pay enough to do that, but not at any price. And that's exactly what we've been doing.
The Guardian reports an email from Karen Jackson, managing director at a law firm, Didlaw. She said this: if you look at Gary Lineker's pay as compared to Claire Balding's, there is obviously a gender pay discrepancy. Claire Balding would certainly have a case unless the BBC can show there is a substantial and legitimate reason for the discrepancy. Are you confident you can?
Yes, I mean, they do very, very different jobs. I'm not going to get into comparing one person with the other, but, it's absolutely right that you have to reflect the job that people do, but also what they bring to the BBC, their value in the market, and that is something that is very common across our industry. I come back to the fact that we are far more diverse than anyone else in broadcasting and anyone else in the FTSE 100.
Maria Miller chairs the Women and Equality Select Committee. Let's have a listen to her.
The data which the BBC did not want to release today, which has been forced to release by the government, has shown a very clear picture, which is there are a lack of women involved in these very highly paid jobs. But when it comes to looking at like-for-like work, women are not being paid as much as men in many instances. And that is a very concerning issue. It's not gender pay gap, that's about equal pay. And there are clear laws about that.
And let's listen to Ian Dale on LBC this afternoon talking to Theresa May.
Do you think that Gary Lineker is worth 10 Claire Baldings?
Well, I think that what has happened today is that we have seen the way the BBC is paying women less for doing the same job as the men.
Is the Prime Minister right? The BBC is paying women less for doing the same job as men?
Look, with respect, we hugely respect what civil servants do, and they work in pay bands.
Could you just answer the question about Theresa May? The Prime Minister.
That's not how we do it.
Forgive me.
The way that I am answering your question.
No, I am answering
your question. The way that we do this, we go through every single individual contract that comes up. We look at the job that they're doing, the value to the BBC, their market value outside.
Yeah, I get all.
There's a process which then.
Is the Prime Minister right or wrong?
We're not paying people in a discriminatory way. We pay them according to their value to the BBC, their value to the audience. So someone like Chris Evans, for example, if you got all of his listeners together, it would cost them less than 1p per week to get.
That's not what I'm asking you. The Prime Minister says...
No, I'm showing to you the value that
the Prime Minister says the BBC is paying women less for doing the same job as men. Does that happen?
Overall, the pay gap at the BBC is 10%.
You're answering a different question.
No, I'm answering your question.
No.
The pay gap at the BBC is 10%.
It's perfectly simple. This is the Prime Minister, for goodness sake, a woman who earns a lot less than a lot of the people you pay.
I can answer your question, which is that when we pay people, it is based on the job that they do, but also their value to the BBC. So someone like John Humphreys, for example, is the preeminent broadcaster and interviewer of his generation. We therefore pay him more than other people. That's absolutely... It's the same as a left back and a right back in a football team don't get paid exactly the same amount.
And that is my point.
It's not true that we discriminate. We pay people
according... That's not my question.
I have answered your question, which
no,
is...
you haven't. The Prime
Eddie,
Minister,
if you stop interrupting me, I would answer it again.
I will interrupt you until I get a clear answer.
I have given you a very clear answer. I have given you a very clear answer.
The BBC is paying women less for doing the same job as men. Are you saying that doesn't happen?
I do say that doesn't happen.
There we go.
Because what we pay people for is their value to the BBC and their relative value in the market.
What's the median salary in the UK?
It's roughly £22,000, I think.
It's about 28,000. How many people are on minimum wage?
I'm not going to start doing a quiz with
you. It's 2.3 million.
It's absolutely clear.
And there are many... Let me ask you a question.
It is absolutely clear.
There are many public sector workers...
It is absolutely clear that these are big salaries.
You're not even allowing me to ask a question now. There are many public sector workers, nurses, police, who have in effect had no pay increase for years. So we've got these people on median salary, we've got these people on a minimum wage, we've got people who haven't had a pay rise in yonks. All of these people, like everyone else, can go to prison if they don't pay the TV licence of £147. And what the BBC does is take all that money and pay at least 96 of its on-air people more than £150,000 each. Now, say to those people who are in all of those categories why that is justifiable.
Yes, it's true that lots of people at the BBC, our senior stars, are paid a lot of money. And that's because we ask to make the best content and have the best talent in the world. So yes, absolutely, we will pay the right amount to get that. We discount it from the market. We've been following exactly the same pay strictures the rest of the public sector have done. We've been rewarding people at the bottom of the BBC workforce in terms of pay more than the average, but we've been very much in line with the public sector.
Coming back to the questions we started with, who interviewed you for your original job at the BBC?
My original job, I wasn't interviewed. It was a moment of crisis for the BBC, as you know, after Savile. Tony wanted to bring in a couple of people immediately to help solve that crisis and to prepare for when for when he took over as Director General. Again, when an organisation is in crisis, that's something that happens. I think you might agree that we've done a good job of doing that. We secured a good charter of 11 years. We secured the licence fee for 5 years. That's the job that I was brought in to do, and I absolutely stand by how we've done that.
So to come back to Philip Davis's point, which is where we started, he was wondering why you got a job at the BBC which wasn't available to women, and you did, didn't you?
That my original job, but you asked me about my current job, so I answered that question.
Forgive me, I should have asked the right question. Your original job at the BBC wasn't available to a woman.
That's right, because it was a moment of crisis after Savile. We were brought in to sort out that crisis, and I hope you'd agree that we've done a good job on that.
Do you think it's fair that your job wasn't open to a woman?
In exceptional circumstances, that does happen, yes, absolutely. And I think you'll agree that Savile were exceptional circumstances.
You think it's fair that your job was not open to a woman?
I think what matters is running the BBC well. I hope that that's what we've done. And in a moment of crisis, he wanted someone to come in and help prepare for how we would come in as a new management team.
But that was never tested, was it? It was never tested whether a woman could do the job better than you.
You have to judge us on our record. Is delivering an 11-year licence fee and the licence fee guaranteed for 5 years and rising in line with inflation, was that a good job? That will be up to you and other people to decide.
Are you saying that none of the people on this list today could be replaced by people just as good and a whole lot cheaper?
You could do that, but that wouldn't be the best.
Why don't you?
Because it wouldn't be the best programmes. I tell you.
But if they're just as good and cheaper, why not?
Because if they're just as good as cheaper, and of course that's what we go through and we do with every single individual contract negotiation. But if they were cheaper but not as good, no. Because
but we agree, you agreed that you could replace people who are just as good on lower salaries.
I misheard your premise. I thought you meant cheaper. But that is the core point. People should judge us on: are our programmes world class? Are we efficient? We won 3/4 of the BAFTAs last year. We've transformed our efficiency. We are industry leading in terms of our efficiency. We are already industry leading in terms of diversity. We will get to equality by 2020. No one else is doing that in the industry, and certainly no one has cut their talent costs like we are by 25% at a time when talent costs have been rising in the whole of the industry. That is actually a very impressive record. We want to go further to get to true equality by 2020.
And just finally, these Radio 4 presenters who get paid so much, where are they going to work if not the BBC? Where's the marketplace for them?
Is there a market for John Humphreys? Absolutely. Is there a market for Jeremy Vine? Absolutely. There is a market now, is there a market for Zane Lowe? That was shown by the fact that he's gone to Apple. We are having people...
Well, no, I was asking you about Radio 4. Speech radio in this country is a very limited genre.
No. Is there a market for those individuals? Absolutely there is. And we are having approaches, for example, Audible, to come take speech radio presenters the whole time. So it is absolutely not true to say that there isn't a market for our presenters. There's increasingly a market for speech radio as well. But where there isn't a market, we do pay less. That's exactly what we do. We pay people who have a market value to get the best stars on the BBC. Where we can afford to do that for less, that's absolutely what we do.
All right, thank you. James Purnell, the BBC's Director of Radio and Education. Now a word about tonight's Moral Maze from Michael Burke. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Eddie.